So we had close to 500 participants and RSVPs for this webinar. So we're looking forward to a very exciting discussion. Okay, I'm just going to give it a few more seconds. We have
get lights on.
Amazing. Okay, so we're almost at 100. Almost at 100 participants, attendees. All right. Okay, so I'm going to quickly do an introduction, and then we're going to run a poll just to see what everyone's been up to. Okay, all right. So good evening and welcome to Adapting to Changes in Business, being organized by the HPS Club of India, the Yale Club, the Wharton Club, the Dartmouth Club of India, and the Common Room Foundation. Many of you all are wondering what the Common Room is. The Common Room is a non-profit foundation being supported by patrons like Lightspeed, Bain, Matrix, Motherland, Green Oaks Capital, and Sequoia, which brings me to our speakers today, Ishaan Mittal, who's an HPS MBA and a principal at Sequoia Capital India, and Yashish Dahiya, the co-founder and group CEO of PolicyBazaar.com. So without further ado, let's dive right into the thick of it. As most of us are feeling, we're living in the middle of an adventure thriller. There's no way to flip to the end of the book or find clues or figure out the ending. And Ishaan and Yashish are going to help us today with answering some difficult questions that all of us are trying to figure out in our business and in our professional life. So first, what we're going to do is quickly run a poll to see, what our attendees are. So, Risha, could you just run that poll really quickly? Okay, so welcome. Please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, because this is going to help us in sort of our conversation today. So we're going to leave this poll up just for a few seconds. So are you an entrepreneur? Are you a working professional? Are you looking to start up something on your own? Or are you an investor? Those are the 4 options. I'm going to leave that up just for a few seconds. I know some people might be 1 or 2, but please pick what you think is most appropriate right now. A few more seconds. I'm going to just leave that up. Okay. We'll leave that up for just a few more seconds. And yes, who am I? So I'm part of the HPS Club of India and on the Harvard Business School Alumni Board. I was also part of the Common Room Foundation, and we do a lot of these webinars. Today is no exception. We're doing one that would help both the investor community as well as the entrepreneurial community. And okay, so Disha, I think we should shut the poll now. I think we have about 140 people, so we'll just see those results coming in. Okay, so we have 45%. So the majority of people on this webinar are entrepreneurs leading a company, and a close second is working professional, and then followed by looking to start something on my own, and about 6% are investors. I think everyone can see this on their screen. All right, so without delaying, I don't want to take any more airtime from our 2 rock stars. So the first question, we all know about the challenges that we're facing right now during this pandemic, right? What opportunities are you seeing in your business? I'd like Ishaan to start off from an investor's perspective and then send this to Yashish. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Faria. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you started with a difficult question. It's hard to articulate in such times, and I don't want to sound ignorant. So this is of course a very difficult time. Many businesses are struggling in terms of revenue, in terms of costs. But that said, we at Sequoia actually are continuing to stay very bullish on the macro of India, on the opportunity that lies ahead in terms of what founders can build in terms of new companies. And where we are coming from is that, I think what a crisis does is it kind of reshuffles the board. It kind of creates an open canvas So it from a bull market where there are many companies, many founders going after the same problem, a tough time actually provides the same founders a more open canvas. Founders who have a clear mindset on what they're trying to build, who is their target customer, what is the white space they are trying to solve for them. Each of those problem statements, when they're trying to find the answer for them, I think this time we are seeing they have an opportunity to go at that problem with the lesser competition, lesser noise, more focus. And of course, this opportunity is varying by sectors. I think there's some sectors which are seeing it already. So spaces like education, edtech, gaming, content are already booming, and there are many portfolio companies in Sequoia's portfolio which are doing very well in those terms. There are many others who are actually struggling today for obvious reasons because of lockdown. But speaking to those founders, it's amazing how most of them are talking about what are they seeing in terms of changes and the opportunity that is out there. To give you an example, I serve on the board of an auto company called CarDekho. And when I speak with Amit, I mean, yes, of course, many things are down today, but his view is that when we come out of it, um, on the other side, it'll be a very shiny day in terms of car sales because people are want to own more by themselves versus share. That's his view. That's his perspective, which is great. And I think if you look at the last crisis we had, right? If you go back to 2008, some of the best companies which we look at today were actually born then. So just to state, WhatsApp, Instagram, Square, Stripe, consumer internet, fintech, these jewels of today were born on those times. And I've spent some time thinking about why. And my view is that coming back to the original point, right? That the opportunity they saw at that time was so much more visible, so much more clutter free for them to build and for the consumers to adopt. That is really, in my mind, the opportunity that lies ahead. But Faria, if I may, I'm probably between the two the less right person to answer this question. Yashish, you are the one building a business. How are you seeing the opportunity out of this?
So we have 17 business units within ourselves. About 4 of them are in very rapid market share expansion mode. So what that would mean is do everything all the way from marketing to sales to hiring to actions to move the industry towards certain processes much faster than before. And the industry is willing to listen because as you can imagine, a lot of channels which were physical in nature are distressed. And so the digital channel becomes very critical. These would be health insurance, life insurance, etc., where we're becoming more and more meaningful. And the kind of processes we would like to bring out, maybe, digital medicals through wearables, medicals through kits, etc., etc. And there are perhaps 100 different activities going on that side. Then there is a second set of businesses which have got totally decimated. Lending, travel insurance. I would say about maybe 4 or 5 business units are in this kind of state. And there we're doing very rapid. I basically break it down into 2 different activities. One is making the business cost right. And the second is looking at what will be the opportunities in 18 months time, not taking a 3-month, 6-month view on opportunities in those situations, not being short termish. So I can give you an example. For example, in Paisabazaar, we can see collections being an opportunity where Paisabazaar does lending and they can also collect money. And in the next 6 months, collections will be a big opportunity. But how big will it be? It will never be a business by itself that you become a collections expert in the country, right? So the point is, how much energy do you put behind something like that? And how much energy do you actually put behind? But let's talk about the other side, right? Paisabazaar has access to customers whose credit score is there, whose salary data is there, whose industry data is there. Now, basis industry, salary, and credit score, you can do pretty good underwriting and thus have access to those customers who are likely to return their loans. And if you could get into a select partnership with one or two NBFCs and create really streamlined processes, you could be a winner as the market comes back. So I think different approaches for different business. And then there are ones in the middle. So, motor insurance, etc., where, things are 10% here or there. So things haven't changed. So we're in a fortunate position to be able to make rational decisions and keep building for the future. But in the area of health and life, of course, it's most exciting because we are seeing market share consolidation. We've already doubled to tripled market share. Can we go 4x, 5x by the time this thing lasts? Yeah, so that's really the approach we're taking. It's different for each business unit.
Interesting. And Yashish, just one curious question from what you said. There are, as you said, right, you have 17 business units, so there are lots and lots of opportunities. How are you thinking about prioritizing and resource management?
Yeah, so we have two ways of allocating resources. One is based on contribution that existing businesses make. And second is scale of opportunities which we see in the future. If we and our likelihood of, so we don't do anything where we are not likely to become number one in the next 3 years. If we become number one in the next 3 years, there's no point even attempting it. That's our approach. So for example, we may have that view in the investment category that, unlikely that we know something that will make us number one in that category within the next 3 years. So we may do nothing. We may just keep kind of messing around in that area. In both lending and insurance, our view is we are number one and we want to stay number one and we want to keep that position. And so crystal clear strategies behind that, and all the resources go into these areas. Of course, we have a business unit structure. So all 17 of these businesses have their own business units who are like mini CEOs. They protect their resources and they fight for their own P&Ls. So there is a bit of, if you would, organizational, lack of fluidity is the best word to put it, that resources are not fungible across the organization. That sometimes causes pools of, so they all have their own technology teams. They all have their own product teams. They all have their own, so that makes it in a way very, expensive to run. But we prefer it that way because if you want to win in the market, you have to be independent. You can't, my belief is you cannot be a world-class. So every business unit has to become world-class. And they have to be capacitized to become world-class. So, and I don't believe they can become world-class through shared resources. Outside of, let us say, finance or, by the way, they own their own HR. They own their own, yeah. So outside of finance, everything is separated.
Got it. Interesting. Arya, you're on mute, I think.
Keep muting myself. Okay, so I had a quick question, and then I'll leave it to your discretion who wants to take this one. And it's about team and culture. So as companies start considering how to do more with less and working from home is the new norm, how do you recommend founders and employees keep morale and motivation at a high? I'd love to get both your perspectives on that.
Sure. If you want, I'll try and take a stab at it first. I think one of the most critical things we were worried about was morale. And as you look through the organization, as it kind of layers on, there are 7-8 layers in the organization, going from the junior most executive all the way to let's say myself. And while I can personally maintain morale up to a certain level, it is very difficult, beyond that. And the kind of things we've been doing are more regular, more regular Zoom sessions, more regular Q&A with or town halls with the entire company. And that's been possible. Sometimes these have had like 3,000, 4,000 people attending. And that's been possible. These can go on for a couple of hours, but basically trying to take away any misgivings. In terms of philosophy, we've communicated to the team every 10 days or so what our view on the situation is. And currently our view is this is permanent. So there is no end to it. This is forever. There is no solution to it. I don't see a day coming when we say COVID is over. So we will not have a post-COVID. We just have a pre-COVID and a COVID phase, and in the middle of it. And that actually clears out, declutters the mind quite a bit in terms of decision making. Because suddenly I'm not thinking that I want to retain these offices, which I will open 3 months from now. I'm saying if I want to get into the office, there's nothing stopping me today. Let me get in today. If I don't want to get into the office, let me return these offices to their owners and not have them at all. Because nothing's going to happen in September, which will say, okay, COVID is gone. And we return to our offices as if anything has changed. And all we are doing is paying rents without using these offices. So I know that suddenly puts the pressure on our team because they now have to decide. So either come into office or shut it down, right? Or just return it. And we've given back 4 or 5 offices. We had 13 offices. And we might give back more. Maybe we return to just 1. But all I'm saying is, from a decision-making process, we have, and this is just 5 days ago, but we've reached a stage where we are saying this is permanent. This is the way it's going to be. Just decide what you want to do and get on with it.
Got it. I think this is very helpful, Yashish. A few things to add. Actually, three things largely. I think one is, and many of what I say is borrowed from founders that we speak to, and they share their learning with us. But I think one big thing we are realizing is that more than ever now, it matters that there's a shared understanding and a shared alignment on the vision and the belief of what we are doing as employees, as founders, as CXOs, etc. Right? And my GV from our team wrote a beautiful article, and if you've not read it, you should read it, on why the why matters more than ever today. And that's a very important question to answer. Whether your employees feel that they're coming to work because they get paid at the end of the month, or are they a part of a story which they'll look back at 5-10 years from now and say, hey, I was a part of this thing that changed the world, this thing that changed the way you consume and the way you interact with the world. I was part of it. And those two are dramatically different mindsets to have for employees. It's important more than ever for founders and for leaders to get their teams to get aligned on that mindset. So that's one. It's almost like, can the full company feel like it's a war? It's them against the world. That feeling is invaluable. I think second is a little more tactical, which is, again, the work-life balance matters more than ever, because never ever have the lines between work and life been blurred more. When does work start? When does it end? So I sleep in the room where my study table is. So am I working? Is my personal life? I don't know. And I'll be honest, in the first 30 days, I felt like it was, there were no blocks in life. It was just a continuum. And that is, that's painful. I at least felt that. I don't know, maybe I was not doing it right, but it was tough. And I heard from many founders in the first 15 days that their teams are more productive than ever. And the 15 days after that, many people started feeling they're burning out. So again, while we are talking about motivation and productivity, it's also more important than ever that we are helping our teams actively in managing their work life. So that's two. And third and last is communication. While we are talking about Zoom and phone calls, etc., I think communicating, being transparent within the firms is again so important today, because there is so much uncertainty. Communication takes a bigger role when there's uncertainty, when people don't know what to expect tomorrow. And one of the founders said it very beautifully to me once. He said, the only thing that is worse than bad news is living in the fear of bad news. So not knowing what's going to come and hit you. So that is probably the third point in my mind, that just how do you rally teams together and keep them, making them feel part of the journey is by being very transparent. Go to the extent of being more vulnerable than ever before with them.
That's so good. Yeah, I think just to kind of add, because as you were speaking, I was thinking further about what are the things we're doing right, what are the things we're doing wrong. And we have a pretty large team, in the sense 13,000 people, right? So we're in some sense not a startup anymore. But that's also because we do everything ourselves. We don't outsource anything. So, but whatever. So I think the things we've been able to do well is keep the communication very, very transparent. And at every stage, as I said, whatever we are thinking goes to the entire company, and there are no two ways about it. We gave people their guarantees of their salaries for up to June end at the very beginning, and we held up to that. So I think that part, people did not have to worry about. But as June end is coming, people are worried about that. Okay, so what happens after June end? I think the third thing which we've somehow ended up doing well is this is something I noticed when I was growing up. Inter hostel or inter whatever house matches used to bring out more passion than inter school matches. And somewhere as you get to a higher level, the passion starts to go down in terms of competition. So it's not really, we have a holding company called eTech. I don't think most of our employees even know eTech, but people know Policy Bazaar versus Paisa Bazaar. And people know term insurance versus health insurance team. And they know, X team versus Y team. So the passion is within those teams at some level in terms of, as we get larger, of course, the top 200 people or so have a deep passion and a deep commitment to the overall purpose of the company, to the overall goals of the company. But eventually what drives people on a daily basis, because, quite honestly, we also don't have too much competition. Both Policy Bazaar and Paisa Bazaar, I joke in our board meetings that we don't have competition, so we compete with each other. Because in fact, the second largest seller of insurance in the country today on the digital side is actually Paisa Bazaar, which is like crazy, right? So you never imagine Paisa Bazaar does insurance. So, but there's a lot of competition between Paisa Bazaar's insurance team and Policy Bazaar's insurance team. Massive competition. They compete at the client level. They compete at every level. So I think that internal, both competition and purpose has been good. What have we missed? I think we haven't trained our L5s, L4s to communicate as much as leaders. They do their job, but they don't communicate as much. And I think that is something we will work further on in terms of making that happen more often. Just like I communicate to them, they need to communicate further. I think that happens up to L2, L3, but it doesn't really happen beyond that. And we, as I said, go to maybe L6, 7, 8.
So I had another segue for this. So just, building on the conversation we've had so far, and given that we have a lot of entrepreneurs in our attendees, the next question is around cash flow. As the economy splutters and cash flow becomes a point of severe anxiety, do you have any recommendations for minimizing expenses and maximizing the cash runway for some of these entrepreneurs that we have? Either of y'all.
Yeah, so absolutely. We again are in a fortunate and somewhat not unique position these days, where there's a lot of capital available, a lot of cash available, and a lot of inbound capital still. But at the same time, how did we actually respond to the situation? So, Paisa Bazaar revenues did fall. Me and David, who's the co-founder of Paisa Bazaar, had a very clear chat. So let me say Paisa Bazaar's total costs were about, let's say, maybe 20 crores a month. And they had revenues of, let's say, whatever, 20, 30 crores a month. We had a very clear chat that, boss, you can't lose more than 5 crores. How soon do you get down to that? 5 crores I'm willing to invest behind the future of Paisa Bazaar. Beyond that, I'm not willing to invest. It was a difficult conversation because David obviously wanted to protect the team. Now, what that meant was some of the team, at the same time, we had huge demand on the health side. So it meant people movement. It meant certain costs which we could not see the use of just going away. It meant more focus on collections from a cash flow perspective. It eventually, the entire team has taken a salary cut as well. I think as of yesterday, they have taken a salary cut. Of course, the senior people being the most. And to play the bonhomie part, although on policy the revenue is up, but policy is also stepping in because we are one company. And the policy team is also taking the cuts, not the same as Paisabazaar, but half the cuts that Paisabazaar is taking, because we are part of one company. And we as founders, me and Alok, of course, we are responsible for both. So we have to take the cuts. But at a founder level, it doesn't really matter because you're not really, salary is quite meaningless to you because you eventually have a lot of ESOP and all that stuff. So I think founders taking a salary cut is a bit of a sham. Like I do it, but it's kind of not even worth mentioning, right? So I think that's the overall philosophy. We have broken it down like any other business unit into 5 stages. One is the survival stage, second is the recovery stage, and then there are further stages. And each stage is pretty tightly defined in terms of what it would look like economically. And and then we of course have strategic steps that we have to maintain within those stages, because if we don't do those, then what's the point? So there's an eye on the future, there's an eye on today. And there's a very clear, and please understand, this is while we have 2,000 crores in the bank. So we get about 150 crores of interest income every year, which can, and Policybazaar is profitable. So we can support Paisabazaar 15 crores a month losses just like that. But it is when you have enough, how do you act? That will perhaps define how, day after tomorrow will come out to be. So, in this situation, we are acting in this particular manner where Paisabazaar total cost is down from something like 20 crores to about 7.5 crores a month. And it'll come down further if required.
Interesting. I think the point Yashish mentioned is very important, that how do you do it when you don't need to do it? Because that's the most difficult time. I actually think, so few things to add to that. Yashish, what you said was very profound. And I'm sure many founders will want to ask, how do you get 2,000 crore in the bank in first place? But I think managing cash flow, there are 2 parts to it, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of conversation around costs, actually, when I speak to founders. Interestingly, there are some founders who are actually also talking about revenues. And I've learned people have done some very interesting stuff to actually increase revenues as well. Starting from as tactical as if you had a call center, can you find an alternate use of that call center, which was not, because your capacity is now available, to selling your product for something that was not made for in a different industry. And it could be short term, but purely tactically from cash flow management perspective. And then second side is cost, which is definitely more important and easier to cut, because we were in a very long bull cycle, very long growth cycle. And at Sequoia, we have learned that growth and inefficiency are hand in hand. Very, very few companies are able to grow very fast, but be perfectly efficient. It's hard. You build inefficiencies because you're always planning for a few months ahead, few quarters ahead, redundancies, etc. But this is a good time to just look back and go deep in your P&Ls and balance sheets and see where is inefficiency sitting. I read this interesting note by a founder. I'm forgetting who this was, but the person said that every 6 months I cancel my credit card and get a new one. And what that helps me do is that whatever recurring expenses were there go away, and the only things that stay are what me and my team really needed, because things are gone. And I think that's a good mindset to have for many of your line items in your G&A, in your rentals, etc. What do you not need anymore? And keep doing it till you get to a point where you think now the runway you have left is enough. And from now, any further cuts will hurt your business and not help your business. But this is definitely, honestly, a silver lining that I see, that you can come out of this more lean.
I think that brings me to, so you all both addressed it to some extent, but could you all dive a little deeper into the next, which is, really growth versus margin. How should companies think about growing fast or focus on the economics, during these times?
I think you have to know your strategy. I've said this for the last 12 years. What a founder should never do, and this is very important for a lot of founders I've met. A lot of founders I meet, especially younger people, including my ex-employees, of them, they come back with, if in the next 3 months I achieve this, then I will get my next round of funding. Then I will do this. Then I will. And I say, okay, so bottom line, your own strategy on how you will make money must be crystal clear. And your investors are basically passengers that you carry with you. But you are the pilot. You will take off the plane and you will land the plane safely. There's no point taking off the plane without knowing where you're going to land it. So I think it's a bit, I don't know the word, but it is a bit not circumspect to think about cash flow versus margin versus profitability. It's, different things at different times. For example, in our health insurance business, I would be okay because of the long NPV. I would be okay to do things. If I genuinely believe I'm going to create an NPV from something, it's okay to take some losses for some time. But by business, all I say is don't ever lie. And I use a hard word like lie to impress investors, because eventually the lines get blurred and one day you start believing your own bullshit. And that's where it gets really scary, because you start believing it and then you don't know how to get back to ground, right? I think if one can avoid that, rest everything is okay. What call you make in terms of whether you want to be profitable in a particular business or not profitable, or how you want to run it is perfectly fine, as long as, and the lines. And the second thing is, once you have a strategy, keep checking it once in a while, right? Like, it shouldn't be that your story is changing every 1 year. I find a lot of companies, I'll do this, but then I'll do this, but then I'll do this, and the A happens, but the B never happened. And so instead of questioning why the B never happened, so I'll give you an example, right? You say, I'll sell motor insurance at a loss, but then I'll sell health insurance to those customers and make a profit. Okay, great strategy. But then test it early. Why do you need 10,000 customers to test it? Test it at 10 customers. Out of 10 customers you got, did you manage to convert a single one to health insurance? If not, there's a question mark. We questioned our own investment business the same way. So investment, the thesis was, it doesn't make money, but you can sell insurance and loans on it and make money, which is how the banks do it and all that kind of stuff, right? And the whole thinking was, once we get scale, we will do these B and C. Why are you waiting for scale? Do the B and C subscale. Try it out. And when we tried it out, we got 3% conversion, which is what everybody else is also getting. But 3% conversion I can get on cold customers also. So then why bother losing money on the investment customer? Right. So I think those kind of fundamental thinking one cannot lose. And Ishaan said a very important thing. Why do we have 2,000 crores in our bank? The reason we have it is so that we never lose that fundamental thinking. Otherwise, you come under pressure to raise money and you want to impress somebody. And you want to impress somebody, you build a story you don't believe initially, but later on you start believing. But that story was never true. So I think that is where a line needs to be drawn by the entrepreneur for their own sake. Otherwise, you just imagine being a pilot, right? You don't fly a plane just because you want to enjoy flying the plane, especially with passengers. You fly it to land somewhere. Imagine a pilot taking off saying, I don't know how to land. Then, which passenger wants to get onto that?
Yes, one follow-up question to what you said is that when you are early in the journey, not early product in a large company, but early company, and you've been through this, so that's why I'm posing this to you. When you are one amongst, today you are the only player, as you mentioned, right? You are your own competition. But when it's early and there are 5 other players and you're thinking, hey, am I number 1? Am I number 3? And there you are left with options of saying, here, do I grow at 200% this year and not think about this 4-5% contribution margin, or say, okay, I'll cut back, but and manage profitability, but I may lose the pole position, and what that implies in terms of funding, in terms of talent, attracting talent. Not everything is about money, right?
Yeah.
How have you?
Yeah, sure. So let me try and answer that. Going back to 2008 when we started, we were certainly not the number one. We were about fifth or sixth. There were lots of companies. In fact, Apna Insurance was the market leader. And they had just raised money from JAFCO. And I believe, I don't know, but I think Sequoia might or might not have been an investor as well. So there was a market leader, and we were coming in from behind. What was different? We had a very clear thought process. I'm sure they also had a very clear thought process. But we had a very clear thought process that this will be a transaction business. So we had 3 stages of our business, right? One was advertising and lead generation. Second was transaction ownership. And third was product ownership. We knew we had to get to product ownership. We also knew we could not get to product ownership on day one. What does product ownership mean? Controlling the product that we are selling. What does process ownership mean, or transaction ownership means? Taking the transaction all the way till issuance on our own platform. What does advertising mean? Passing on the customer to insurance companies or banks to do the closure. We, not once to my investors did I pretend that I was doing a great job. In fact, I have stood in board meetings and said, we are selling our soul by doing the advertising business. But that's the only way we can survive today. But I never once pretended the advertising business was a great business to do. And there are a lot of, people in the VC industry who will vouch for that. I remember conversations with them where I said, the business I do is right now crap. And I know it. What is the point? I'm not lying to myself. I'm not lying to my investors. Those who come along will not ever get a surprise. I'm telling them very clearly what I believe. That day, my business was crap. I was just doing an advertising lead generation business, passing on leads. But my ambition was always to build a transaction business. And as I got to the stage of 2011, we moved the business to transaction business. Even today, we have a large call center. I have not once pretended that we don't have a call center, but I have also not once pretended it will always be the case. One day we will get, and every year we monitor that. It becomes half of our transactions. So basically our call center number of agents divided by the number of transactions halves every year. I think patience, knowing where you're going, all is great. And I'll give you one very easy example. And my apologies to Apna Insurance in that respect. But both of us started the health insurance business with Apollo Munich at the same time. Both of us saw the same data. What was that data? For every 1 rupee we were spending, we were losing 20 rupees, both of us. It could not have been different for them. They might have lost 30 rupees, they might have lost 10 rupees, but they were also losing money hand over fist. So were we. What did we do? We made it a small business, only 20 people, and we ran it for the next 4 years. Like that. Till that 1:20 became more like 1:1. But by that time, they had given up on it. They gave up in about 6 months. They said, we will not do this. We will stick with the advertising business because it's transaction business never made. What are we talking about? Deep conviction that transaction business will work. But knowing you cannot lose too much money on this. So keeping it small. Going on building till we got to 1:1. When we got to 1:1, I think it's fairly enough data available there. 2011, we took our sales 10x. We expanded straight away. We knew we could expand, but there was no point expanding when we were making losses. We kept testing. What does that mean? Deep conviction, patience, knowing when to hold back, knowing when to run. By 2011, I think easy policy, whatever, paisa wasn't there. They had already disappeared because for whatever reason, they may have had a different strategy. But from my point of view, both the conviction, the patience, and the fact that I'm never telling my investors any different story than what I believe. All 3 have stood the test of ground time for me. Like I couldn't be any other way because the way I am, I just can't be any other way. But maybe, there are other strategies. But I think you put too much pressure on yourself by telling somebody something else. There's just enough time in this life for one agenda.
Yeah. No, almost nothing to add. Yashish, you did a bang on job on answering this question. I'll just actually add one thing by bringing the discussion back to something you said in the beginning. When you talk about multiple products and how you prioritize them. And I think when one thinks about growth versus margin, I think a very important thing to think about, more important in these times than ever, again, is efficient growth. And can you focus yourselves on things that are most important for your business, which are strategic, where you want to be number one, versus things that just add to the top line and make that 100% growth look like 150%, and that additional 50% comes from items which are not core
Sure.
to being the large public market company. Like, at least I think of, like, everybody's trying to be a large company, a sustainable, enduring enterprise. But that 50%, if it doesn't fit in that story and makes you losses, it's probably worth thinking about that very hard.
So I'll give you a very simple example from last month. We made profits in February as Policy Bazaar. We made profits in March. We made profits in April. And obviously, we wanted to keep that unbroken streak for some more time. But what happened in March is, because of issuance, so, one part of our business is very profitable, and issuance struggled there. So in March, we lost some revenue there. But there was another business which has very high NPV, which does not have good instant margins, where I want to keep investing because NPV is solid, right? A lot of my team said, look, we've had a profitable run and our investors like to see this. Why do we want to make a loss in a month, right? We're making a small loss, about 2.5 crore rupees, but in May, we will make a loss because we are investing behind that particular business, which has high NPV. So you're seeing the mindset, right? It's never to impress anyone. It is our business. Who are we building it for? It's for ourselves. If the investor can't see, that's somewhere their problem, not my problem, right? I always tell them, look at the quality of the business. Don't just look at these revenues and numbers. You have to look at the quality of what is being built, right? I think, but that's a very simple and clear example. We will make a 2.5 crore loss, which could have easily been a profit. And I wouldn't have lost much on the revenue side. But on the NPV side, I would have certainly lost, which we have just made in May. So, 5 more days to go. But yeah, I think we will end up with a bit of a loss.
Okay, thank you for that. And speaking of quality of business that investors have to look at, I wanted to answer one burning question on everybody's mind. Is this the right time to fundraise for a startup, new or sort of fairly seasoned startup? So
I think my view is there's never a bad time. 2008 is when we started. As Ishaan, you have to eventually find one investor. There are 100 investors out there. There are more than 100, perhaps there are 1,000 investors out there. You have to find that one who agrees with you, right? We found at that time, we found InfoEdge. Please understand, their own stock price was at 1/3 of what it had been 6 months ago. And still they went ahead with the investment, pretty large investment for them. They did not invest in one go. They gave us in tranches, but that's fine. I think the next time we had regulatory crunch, 2011 regulations had come out. Again, we had only one investor, and that was Inventus. And we spoke to everybody. But only one investor, Inventus, agreed. They benefited from that. I think they've got 28x or something. But I think the point is, in the initial days, you have to just convince one. But I think by the 3rd round, 4th round, you should be in a situation where you got to line up. So after the Inventus round, we always had multiple investors willing to get in at any particular stage because the business strength kept building. But I think what you have to do. If you've got a great idea, if your business is great, then there's never a bad time to invest. Yes, if you were, the typical person, sorry to say this, but just come out of engineering college, just doesn't want to do a job, wants to be a founder instead, thinks of the first thing to do, and believes that $5 million is the minimum check that VCs write, and that's happened quite a bit in the past. I think those times may not be the same anymore. And I know a lot of my friends suffer from that mindset. So for them, I think it's never a good time to raise. I think mistakes were happening in the past, which should not be repeated. And they should find a, better thing to do.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. I agree with Yashish. I mean, it's never a bad time to raise. There are easier and more difficult times. I'll not lie. This is a more difficult time to raise capital than it was 6 months ago. There's no questions asked about it, right? In terms of speed of investments, amounts of investments. I mean, the data is there. It's no more subjective anymore. That said, I am a little bit of a believer in this look at the glass half full philosophy. So say you were a founder in a young category, and there were 5 other companies in that category 6 months ago. It was easy for you. It was easy for everybody. But it's difficult for you and it's difficult for everybody today. So if you are the best and you believe in it and you have the best team and the best product, if you get to raise capital and the environment is so difficult, I think it's worth its weight in gold. Because the same amount of money today is worth a lot more. You'll build more, you'll build a bigger lead than ever before. And I believe this is one of the reasons why so many great companies actually come out of these bear cycles. Because they are few amongst those who got the resources that they got, not just in terms of money, but in terms of talent. I was talking to an engineering head of a company. He was saying many people who wanted to join a startup 6 months ago today want to be in big tech because that's a safe haven. So it's harder to get talent today. But if you can do all that, raise capital, get talent today, I think it will enable a creation of a much better company because you'll be so far ahead of your competition. That's one. I think a second on that is it's important to, when you're raising capital, thinking about who are you raising capital from. I think times have significantly changed. I think in today's world, I would strongly advise to raise capital from folks you know from before, who have met you, who have that comfort with you, and you have that comfort with them. Because, and Yashish, you should comment on this. You know this as much as I do, but I would say go for certainty of funding, of certainty of closure of the round, speed of all that, least pain caused to you and your team more than optimizing for the last inch on valuation and the amount raised. But that's my view. And I'll make a shameless plug there. We as Sequoia are open for business. And so are many other funds. Like fact, last 4 Mondays are investment decision meetings. Last 4 Mondays for us have been more busy than the rest of the year, CY20. It's a fact. We have discussed more opportunities. So there are many investors who are keenly looking at the market and out there to fund great teams and great products. But Yashish, you should add more on this.
So I think the last piece two pieces I would add. One is the investor you would get in these times is more likely to be the right kind of investor. So, they will know what they are getting into and they will stay with you through the thick and thin as times proceed. So I think it's from that perspective, and I'm aware Sequoia is one of those who's clearly been more aggressive than the others on the early stage side and the others. So I would clearly encourage anybody to try and raise in these times. But on the second part of valuation optimization, I gave a bit of misinformation because when Inventus was investing, we did have 2 more term sheets at a higher valuation, at about 60% higher valuation, not just higher valuation. And there were small amounts, $3 million we were raising, and we were already doing quite okay from a revenue perspective. But we decided to go with Inventus. And at every round, the philosophy we have put is valuation doesn't matter. So we decide what our valuation is. We just put it there. And that is one of the reasons there's always a bit of a glut of investment. A lot of people say, can we do higher price? We don't do that. We just keep it at the same. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I have to tell you, my, money is where my mouth, whatever, mouth is where my money is, whatever that story is, right? So we've never focused on valuation. Rather, we focused on the investor we wanted. I think it's no secret that 2.5 years ago, we were very clear we only wanted SoftBank. And Sequoia is a great investor, and the time when we wanted Sequoia. And there's kind of no shame about that, right? But but it was very, very clear we only wanted SoftBank. And after that, we only wanted Tencent. So we were crystal clear. We decided our investor. We went after them and we said, what's the deal at which you will invest? And it was that simple. But I think the investor was far more important than either the amount of money or the valuation that they came in at. As long as it kind of kept being up rounds, we don't like to do a down round ever.
Great. So I, there's so many questions that are pouring in. Thank you so much for, that very positive, outlook. But we have one question that I wanted either one of you to take. It's from Anirudh Suri, the MD of India Internet Fund. And he's asking, given the uncertainty that COVID has thrown up about every company's financials, what key business metrics are you focusing on optimizing right now? I think this is more tailored towards Yashish, though.
So as I said, we have 17 business units. We're looking at all of them. We're looking at multiple factors, but the drift is NPV, revenue, margins. There are businesses we do for different reasons. Like there's no secret, we do our motor business not for margins. We do it for brand position. We do our investment business similarly for brand position. Because those are large categories in the insurance category in the industry, and we have to win. So I think there are different metrics for different businesses. Some you do because you want to prove you are a player in the market and you want to stay relevant. You don't make losses on them, but they are not really margin drivers. As I said, both our motor and our investment business are examples of that. Investment as an insurance investment products. Health and life are our core businesses. There we do deep, of course, we look at from a metrics perspective, we will look at margins and NPV. But more importantly, I'm very, very happy to give up margins or NPV in terms of long-term consumer strength building. And what do I mean by that? Can we get exclusive products, exclusive processes? Can we get smarter in terms of holding on to our consumers for the future? So I think I once famously or infamously at one board meeting told somebody that I don't need MIS to run my business. And they got quite upset about it. I think I really hold to that. As a founder, you can't just be driven by by a single metric. You have to know why you're doing something, be very crystal clear about it, and be able to articulate it to everybody and get their agreement on it. But yes, the metrics are pretty much the same: revenue, NPV, transactions, and we look at competitiveness in various ways. We look at competitiveness in terms of market share, etc.
Okay, Ishaan, do you have anything to add to that at all, or should we move?
That was perfect.
So there's one recurring question. So I just wanted to see if maybe Ishaan, you can answer this one, which is what interesting business or opportunities are you looking at post-COVID? Has there been sort of a switch in the businesses that you're focusing on at all?
Actually, no. No, not at all. I'm trying to, the reason I paused, I was just thinking back on things that investment opportunities that we've discussed in last 3 to 4 weeks. We've had consumer brands, we have consumer internet, we've had financial services, we've had payments. We have not had insurance, but yeah, hasn't changed materially. I think there are some factors that have changed. There are certain industries who have tailwinds because of COVID, and there is a more positive sentiments when discussing those, such as I mentioned, edtech, gaming, content. and there are some which are which, if involve more delivery, more physicality, have a little bit of headwind, and that does weigh in on the discussions. But it's not like fundamentally sectors or opportunities have changed for us.
Thank you for that. We have one other question. Oh, sorry. Did you have something to add?
No, Faria,
so on Paisa Bazaar, if I can just say on Paisa Bazaar, because the business has changed quite a bit, we clearly see an opportunity for deeper partnership with NBFCs, 1 or 2 NBFCs, to give them access to see what NBFCs usually do not have is easy access to customers. What Paisa doesn't have is easy access to processes and capital. And so the marriage out there can be quite meaningful. So we're looking at tie-ups with, or even Paisa Bazaar maybe acting as a quasi NBFC in some way to build that part of the business. But other than that, nothing seems to have changed much.
No, I was actually, Faria, just going to, I saw a very interesting question, which I was very curious to ask Yashish. He mentioned this. I'm trying to find that one. There was a question around what would your advice be to somebody graduating right now, whether the person should become a founder or should join a company?
I think first of all, don't take my advice. I keep telling my children the same thing because they would be at something like my children's age. My children are just starting to go to college now, and if you're graduating, I think if you're a founder, you will know it. You will not be able to take advice of everybody. You will know it and you will do it. I had the benefit of wanting to be a founder straight after college. And I think that would have been an excellent life. My parents forced me back into work through a lot of emotional pressure. And that also turned out okay. I respect the 4 or 5 years of work experience I had in various companies. And then, another 4 or 5 years, so about 8, 10 years eventually. But then, with these things, if you look back, you cannot know what the other route would have led to. So the other route might have led to a totally different, like the other route was education, right? So I had started up a tuition center in my house. And after my IIM, and I was making more money than my job would pay me. So, and I was quite comfortable doing that. But, my parents said, if you want to become a tutor, why do you have to do IIT and IIM? There are a lot of people doing tuitions without all that. So anyway, I think the point is you'll always get advice. Your parents will mostly advise towards safety. People like me will always, have a bit of bias towards try new things. But I think you will eventually make up your own mind. And both have their positives. I think whatever journey you take, it will depend upon what decisions you make every day, not the journey you took. I can, that's my view, that the journey you took is not important. What you did on that particular day is the most critical, because that is what you are. So I remember at ITW when I was working, I did not like the company. I had just joined it because that was the only job I could find. I did not like what I was doing. What I was getting paid was literally peanuts compared to my other batchmates. I was getting paid about 1/3 of what everybody else was getting paid. But every day I turned up to work, I was ferocious about my work and about what I achieved. I think I had the highest sales kind of ever in whichever role I got into. And the way I built my team was exceptional. Because I thought it was my business. There was no difference. Because every day when I turned up for work, it was me. I think that helped me stay who I am, right? I think somewhere that's what's much more important than, what macro decision you take, because that you can change. You have a 30, 40-year career. You can change it after 2 years. Sanjeev Bikhchandani, whom I respect a huge amount, was not an entrepreneur from start. He, worked at GlaxoSmithKline and various other companies, and then finally got here. As did Hitesh, who was at Unilever before he got here. So I don't think there's anything, both my kids, I tell them, to become entrepreneurs if they can, when they can. Till then they can do a job. I think it's that simple.
Great. We've sort of hit the one hour mark, and there's so many questions that are still left unanswered. I wanted to take this minute to thank both of you all for your time today. We had so many questions that poured in beforehand, and I know that we have to do another session maybe in a couple of months to see how what we've spoken about today has really evolved. But a really big thank you both to you, Ishaan and Yashish, for spending an hour with us and answering these questions and helping us, giving us some guidance and clues in this thriller that we live. I'm sure we'll be back for more, so we will be annoying you for some more time in the future. But on behalf of the Harvard Business School Club, the Wharton, the Yale, the Dartmouth clubs, thank you so much. And of course, the Common Room Foundation. Please follow us on social media to hear more about events that we do that are free and open to the public. And the same with our alumni clubs. We have many exciting events that are lined up. So keep following, watching the space, and more to come. Thank you again, and everybody please stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. So bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you for having us, Parya. Thank you.
Thank you.